Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Seb. How are you?
Really good. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, probably a whole of a week. Huh? Have you
Yeah,
managed to survive
at
without me?
least I have. Cool. Well, it's really good to have you with us, Sue. Excited to host this new episode of our Unlocking Success series with Sue Nabeth M. Sue's been around. She's part of the CS landscape. She's probably one of the most seasoned CS professionals out there. So we're really happy to have you, Sue. Um, by way of introduction, my name is Sebastian Chatelier. I'm COO and co-founder of customer education platform Melting Spot. We help SaaS businesses deploy academies within their interface to roll out personalized and automated onboarding journeys in their SaaS. So that's what we do. And I'm excited to have Sue with us. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Sue, and tell us all about how you came into CS, and then I'll introduce today's topic.
Right.
Over
Thank
to
you.
you,
Well,
Sue.
thanks again, Seb, for inviting me. And yeah, we've seen a lot of each other, I think, over the last weeks or so. So thank you again. We organised a meetup of customer success at Melting Spot, which was the 50th meetup.
Yep,
So we've been
indeed.
doing that since 2016. So that was a great hit. So thanks again for that. And of course, we had Engage Paris last week, Engage Paris, as we say in French,
Oh,
last week.
yeah. One of
So
the
that was
yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah, one of
And
the
then
most successful events in customer success landscape, at least in Europe.
well, thank you for that. And what I can say, I think it's the only customer success event in the world which is in another language than English. So I
Okay,
think just that in itself is quite an accomplishment. Yeah. So, but thank
cool.
you, and thank you for
Yeah,
coming and for sponsoring us. It was a great event, and thank you
our
to the
pleasure.
participants.
Cool.
So yeah, so as Seb said, so Sue, so yeah, I'm British originally, but I've been, let's say, adopted by France and been living in France now for just over 30 years. My husband's French. I have three French boys, and I have been working in customer success now for 15 years, which sounds like a long time, relatively speaking. The origins of me becoming in customer success, it stems back. This is going to show you how old I am, Seb. It stems back to 25 years ago. Can you remember, Seb,
Yeah.
25 years ago? Now, now that's when I
Time
first,
flies with you, Sue.
it goes so quickly. Yeah, there's, when you're having fun. And that was when we first started to hear about CRMs in France. So
Mhm.
it was like 1998, 1999, something like that. And I was doing a project deployment for one of the very first CRMs at a company that I was working at. Actually, there's somebody on this call called Delphine, who was one of my ex-colleagues. So just say
Cool.
a little hello to Delphine. You probably remember this Delphine. And at the time, it was quite strange because it was a French-made CRM that I was deploying in the United States. So I went to the Silicon Valley, of all places, to deploy this CRM made in France. So it's a bit like taking ice to Eskimos. And when I when I was there, that was the first time I'd actually heard about Salesforce. We've not heard about Salesforce here in France then. And that's when I first got interested in software and the realization that software is not about techware, but it's about the
Mhm.
fleshware. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, like 25 years ago, which made me want to stay in this world of techs and geeks. I'm not from a tech background, but what interests me in this is the human aspect of making people's business lives better through technology. So that's when actually all my career here in France has been revolved around that. And then 12 years ago or so, I was working at a French integrator. And so we're integrating lots of different pieces of software, from CRMs, from MDMs, from business intelligence tools, lots of different things. And that's when I decided to put into place a whole offer around customer success and change management, because it was a way that we could distinguish our offer from all the other integrators in the space. So I was an entrepreneur, and I put into place this whole new offer, and we were able to adapt this offer to any kind of technology. We started off with CRMs because that was my baby, if you like. I was working with CRMs for the last 10 years. But then we spread this out to other pieces of software. At the time, I remember I was really torn because I didn't have a name for this offer. And we called this offer the BBC. So nothing to do with Top Gun, nothing to do with MasterChef, but it was an acronym for boosting business change, BBC, because I'd never heard of customer success back then. Otherwise, I could have called it customer success. So that's when 10 years ago, I heard this name, customer success, here in France. And that's when I got into the role officially, if you like, with these two little magic words behind them. And now I've created my own company, which is called Success Chain, and which is a company which provides consulting, coaching, training, and fractional services to companies who either want to define, refine, and operations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. I'd like to pause on two things you just mentioned. One is the fact that it all started in the CRM world, and two is the fact that you call this initial offering boosting business change. And I think customer success definitely is all about driving better business outcomes for customers. It started in the CRM world, and I think there's a good reason for that. And at least it's a very good introduction to today's topic, which is let's call it the way we wanted to call it initially. Traditional CS metrics suck. So how could we reevaluate the way we measure success in customer success? And to touch on the CRM side of things, CRMs are in the world of pre-sales, so sales and marketing, and we know that this landscape's been evolving very rapidly over the last 15 years. There's a lot of marketing metrics, and there's a lot of automation, personalization in this world, something that customer success was lacking up until very recently. And what we saw with the rise of inbound marketing and automated marketing these last 15 years is coming quickly in the world of CS. We see a lot more AI in CS. We see a lot more personalization, a lot more automation as well with the rise of CS platforms, customer education platforms of all sorts. So it's fair enough to use metrics from CRMs and the marketing world, and then see how we can adapt them, adjust them to CS. Is this a good way to address the topic, Sue?
Yeah, I think the parallelism between what you've seen emerge in the marketing and in the MarTech world with the technology, which goes with the way that we are approaching the methodologies around doing marketing. It's not just about the technology; it's about the way that we have adapted our methodologies of, putting into place new organizations with BDRs, with SDRs, with MQLs, with SQLs, and all this kind of terminology, which we didn't have before. And I think in the world of customer success, when I started out in France here, like 10 years ago with the words customer success, it was a kind of one size fits all approach. And now what we're seeing in the world of customer success is more specialized roles, like you've just described in the world of marketing. And so when you have these specialized roles, you have associated KPIs. And I think with customer success, as we're more specialized, we don't just have a CSM who is like a Swiss knife. Now we're seeing CSMs who have dedicated onboarding roles, dedicated education roles, as you know, with Melting Spot, dedicated communities and roles associated with community management, dedicated renewals. One of the things we saw as well, and it was touched upon at Engage Paris, is the specialization around verticalization of the customer success managers. So with all these, you're obviously going to get a whole range of different KPIs, which are going to be measuring the performance of customer success management. And to come back to the term, I know we use this very vulgarized term, So traditional customer success metrics suck. So we can probably talk about that and talk about, you know, why they suck, what is wrong with them, and why we probably need to revisit some of those metrics and have something which is more adapted to what we're trying to achieve in the world of customer success, I think.
Yeah, cool. And we're going to dive right into it. We're very familiar with the basic high-level metrics in CS. So around retention, around expansion. We're very familiar with the concepts of NR, of churn. And what I'd like to touch on is I'd like to try and close the gap between these sort of end game objectives, business objectives, and the usual the day-to-day activities of any particular customer success manager out there. And I'm sure there's a way to like bridge that gap. And you came up with an interesting framework called AMPM, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd love to hear from that.
Good memory. Good memory, Seb. Yeah, if you look, just to have a, before we get perhaps to the AMPM, which I'll describe, if we just look at the daily activities of a CSM and what we're doing, what we're being measured on right now, just as a general rule of thumb, what we're being measured on in the world of customer success doesn't fit the bill for lots of reasons, right? So what you just mentioned, Seb, retention rates, expansion rates, NRR, and churn, all of those are lagging indicators. And I've seen numerous customer success managers who are measured on those lagging indicator metrics. When we all know very well that in a SaaS company or recurring revenue company, those lagging metrics cannot just be influenced and controlled by a CSM team, right? Churn reasons, if you look at churn reasons, there are lots of different reasons in which everybody in the company can actually chip in to make sure that churn is reduced. You know, it was one of the main themes of Engage Power, it takes a village, right? So all of those lagging indicators, it does take a village to make sure that they are optimized. And one of the frustrations that I'm seeing in a lot of customer success teams and companies is that these customer success managers are being solely held responsible for these lagging indicators, when in fact it should be everybody who is held responsible. That's one thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that the way customer success management has been positioned, it's a legacy of something negative. So when customer success was first put in, it was a reaction to churn. Because we started with recurring revenue. So it was reactive mode, defensive mode, rather than thinking, okay, how do we put customer success into place as being part of the strategy top down, right? It's not up until now, it's not been like that. And I think this is where we need to change things, right? So I always have this term, which I say, in the world of customer success, we need to change from being positioned as churn busters and orientate towards earn boosters. That's our real role. We're earn boosters. We're there to be a catalyst for growth and not there just to firefight churn, right? So that's a positioning thing. If you look at the other metrics by which we're measured, they are risk associated, defensive. So if you look at, you know, for example, health scores, we're looking at risks and we're trying to alleviate as many risks as possible. So just using a health score in itself is a defensive mechanism. It's not a proactive, it's not a leading activity, right? The other thing as well that we're facing as a problem around the metrics, and that's why in my mind they still suck, is because they do not relate directly with the growth of the business. If you mentioned marketing, you mentioned, you know, sales. So for decades, they've always been directly correlated with the growth of the business. And it's very easy to join the dots between their activity and their impact on the business. In customer success, not, because kinds of metrics, and for the different reasons which I've just mentioned, do not easily equate to the revenue and profitability of the company. So that's why we should be reassessing the metrics around customer success and putting into place metrics which are really showing what we are contributing to the growth of our company. And that's why we come back to your question, Seb, which is around the framework which we've put into place, which is called AMPM. So AMPM, what does it mean? Well, obviously morning and afternoon. AM means activity measurement. PM means performance measurement. And so what we do with this methodology is we first of all define, okay, what are the different performance metrics that each of the users or stakeholders of your piece of software need to achieve as a consequence of using it. And then we do a retro planning back from that performance metric to what are the different activities which they should be putting into place and measuring in order to achieve that performance. So this AMPM framework, in fact, it's a framework which I put into place 15 years ago when I was doing all this change management in software. And when you're doing change management, you need to make sure the definition of change management is to make sure that people get from a state A to state B. And state A is a known existence to a state B, which is an unknown future. And so this unknown future, this is where we need to help the users or the customers, stakeholders, to be able to define what that performance looks like. And, you know, in the world of customer success, when you ask this kind of question, you know, what does success look like? It's very difficult for customers to express that. So we need to be helping them to do that. So this AMPM, just to give you an example, you were talking about MarTech. So we give a MarTech example. Mm-hmm. So we have different customers with different verticals. So in the MarTech sphere, for example, if you have a lead generation platform, for example, a performance metric could be you want to increase your MQL to SQL conversion rate from 10% to 13% by the end of the year. So that's a very smart, clearly defined metric with a time deadline. In order to get to that performance metric, what we need to do is to do a mapping of what are the activities which either the users and or the stakeholders who are trying to achieve that metric need to do. So a lot of the time in the world of customer success, we're only very much focused on our tool. And I think we're too focused on what I call belly button metrics around tool usage. When in fact, if we really want to help our customers, our users to make the tool sticky within their business environment, we have to provide them with recommendations of activities which are related to their business as usual. So in this example, the performance metric is still the increase of the MQL to the SQL rate, for example. Just some examples of activity metrics. It could be dedicate a full-time person to doing this MQL, SQL conversion. So that full-time person, this recommendation, I'm not talking about the tool. I'm talking about the organization around the tool, right? That's the first thing. The second example could be you need to really increase your social media engagement by plus 50% in order to get to that performance result. So what I'm proposing there as a recommendation is nothing to do with the tool. It's a recommendation around the process of what they should be doing, right? So this process could include your tool or not, but it's a process, right? Another recommendation for activity could be, okay, you need to increase the number of identified weekly contacts by plus 50% per week. That could be a recommendation around the tool because you could actually reflect that and see that and measure that within your lead generation tool. Yeah. Another recommendation around the tool could be, okay, out of those increased 50% of contacts that you're identifying each week, make sure that at least 50% of those are ICP contacts, so ideal customer profile contacts, right? Again, around the tool. Now, one of the magical things, it's very simple, but it's very impactful when you're doing change management, is to put into place routines and rituals around behavior. So one of the things could be very simply stop cold calling and stop using that bloody Excel file, So that, again, that is something, not just what you have to do, but what you have to stop doing. And we had, there was an anecdote of one of our customers who was following these kind of examples in terms of activity metrics and measuring them. And their stakeholder, the chief sponsor, in fact, said, right, okay, you only put your contacts in this tool that they were using in the morning when you're drinking your cup of coffee. So we saw peaks of adoption every morning between 8 and 9 o'clock when everybody was just entering their contacts in the morning, and that became a ritual, that became routine. And that installs changes in behavior, and that's what you need. You need to think about, okay, it's not just pressing this feature, pressing this function. It's about changing behavior. And that's when things get sticky.
I love the fact that and I can't emphasize enough the fact that adoption metrics are only like one part of the equation. They're probably the visible part of the iceberg when it comes to CS metrics. We all tend to focus on, have they clicked on this button? Have they unlocked this feature? Have they started? Have they performed their first data import or export and so on? And at Melting Spot, what we track in terms of CS metrics and customer health scores is not only high adoption customers, but high-end effective adoption. And there's a huge difference between the two. It takes a bit of CS sentiment to measure because we probably don't have the right AM the processes in place. So we try and compensate with a lot more CS sentiment. But there's a huge difference because the worst customer of all is the one that's using the tool. It looks like their adoption metrics are super high. It looks like they're in the green zone, and in fact, if they're not achieving their business outcomes, their business goals, then they're at massive risk of churn, because not only are they not achieving their goals, but they're investing, they're spending time and money and resources and effort, and so that's the worst combination of all. So we try, and it's a different way of saying what you just said. We try and focus as much as possible on the effective adoption and not just adoption.
Exactly.
Otherwise, yeah.
I love what you said there, Seb, because I another anecdote. This time, I was actually working at a lead generation tool a few years ago, and we saw peaks of adoption for this lead generation tool, and they were consulting the contacts on this particular tool, and we thought, this is great, and it was like 100% adoption. So when we delved in to try and understand, what was the business case behind this high adoption rate, we found out that the people who used that were salespeople, and they'd put into place an internal competition at their company because this lead generation tool had lots of photos of the people who they were identifying. And so they were using this. These people were predominantly male. And so they were having an internal competition about all the attractive females that they were that they were seeing on the lead generation tool, right? So it wasn't exactly kind of the business case that we'd had in mind. So 100% adoption, but not for the right reasons, right? So,
maybe there was a pivot at play.
Yes.
Something to yeah. Okay. Cool. That's really something that I think is probably valuable for people listening in, focusing on all the underpinning activities you want to measure that will drive your business outcomes, and make sure that you track these activities.
Just
Yeah,
to
go.
probably just say a little bit more about this framework as well, because it's a framework which implies that you need to really get together. So it's not just about, the customer success team coming up with a few metrics around performance and activity metrics, but it really does take a village to put this into place. And so it usually involves different teams, cross-functional teams. So the product team, the marketing team, the sales team, all coming together to align on, okay, if you are a certain type of persona using our tool, so if you come back to CRM, for example, you could be a sales persona, you could be a marketing persona, or you could be a service persona. What are the typical kind of performance metrics that you can realistically achieve over the customer life cycle? And what we need to do is say, okay, after the first 3 months, if you're persona A, sales, for example, realistically, you can have your first time to value. So that's your first performance metric, the first time to value, after 3 months. Your next value, because, when you're in recurring revenue, you need to have recurring values. So you can't just stop at the first time to value. You have to then think, okay, what can be the incremental value after that, right? So over time, you get more and more value. So you need to define what is realistically achievable in terms of performance over 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And what are the different activities which can fluctuate and which can change over time that you need to recommend your customers to put into place, right? So what you end up doing is having a mapping of all these different performance metrics and activity metrics, so that when you're onboarding a new customer, you as a CSM and also the salespeople are usually involved up front because they have defined the initial performance and activity metrics, at least for the first time to value. And then it's just the CSM that then executes upon that. And what is great is this can then feed into your success plan. And this then in turn feeds into your business review. So these metrics are really key. And over time, you can fine tune them because it's something which you're going to have more and more data around. And you can then become even more pertinent when you're onboarding new personas or new different kinds of stakeholders, because you become more pertinent over time, saying, look, this has really worked well with a similar customer to you who's in the same kind of sector or vertical. And this is what they've done. And so this is why this AM/PM framework becomes very powerful over time. And what you also need to do with this is to think about who are the different levels of stakeholders. So you can have AM/PM for direct users, and you can have AM/PM also for the managers of the users and the stakeholders. And so for each one, it's not necessarily the same outcome. You have to think about, okay, what are the different levels of granularity?
Interesting. Really interesting. The other, I guess, when there's no point having metrics if you can't track, if you can't track them, and this usually comes with tools and like the right tools for the metrics you're trying to measure. What kind of tools are like 100% required in the world of CS to be able to efficiently do like metric-driven kind of success strategies?
Yeah, I think with obviously what we're seeing with the CSPs, that's obviously something which is very helpful to track.
So customer success platforms,
the customer success platforms, yes.
Yeah.
So that we can see, and they are designed to track the traditional metrics. There are other different, let's say, periphery tools which can help track these as well. I think that we're still scratching the surface about what I've just talked about, right? Because I think that we're still not really tracking the value in the world of customer success. This is still something we're scratching the surface of. We spoke about it at a couple of sessions at Engage Paris with PlanHat, for example. PlanHat have actually put into place in their customer success platform a framework around value as well. So that's something which is rather pioneering, I think, compared to what we're talking about. We are working at Success Chain. We are working as well with a company that has started to use a tool which enables you to track value as well as a customer success manager. I think with artificial intelligence as well, this is going to be used even more and more to be able to analyze this kind of data that I'm talking around with activity metrics and performance metrics. And this will then help us to give a forecast in future which of the companies who are likely to be retained, or which of the companies who are likely to probably expand with upsell and cross-sell as a result of their expression of the activity metrics and the performance metrics. So I think we're still scratching the surface to really gain, I would say, real data insights around value, because we're still not really doing this very much.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are still using old Excel file to do that.
Yeah, or their CRM.
Or the CRM.
And they do the trick until a certain point, I think, to a certain degree. We sometimes recommend our customers to max out the value they get out of their CRM, use their CRM for CS purposes, and when they really hit roadblocks, then only at that time deploy a proper customer success platform, because we know it's time consuming, and it tends to focus CS teams a lot on the back end side of things. So making sure that processes are in place, that their automations are in place. So my onboarding journey should be this and that. So when a customer hit that button, then I should send them an email telling them, hey, well done, kudos, and then unlock the next feature. So but they tend to forget to actually speak to their customers, not necessarily one-on-one. And at NauticSpot, we're in the business of doing of helping SaaS businesses scale their customer success. So we don't bet for the one-on-one team necessarily, but mutualized conversations in the shape of a group onboarding session or a webinar. They're all opportunities to actually speak to your customers without spending too much time and effort on one-on-one. And I think that there's a lot more value, well, at least you should be very conscious of keeping some CS time for real customer conversations, and not just moving objects and properties from here to there and then syncing tools. And so I'd be mindful and very cautious of keeping customers at the front of your mind.
Absolutely. And it's good. I mean, it's true that a lot of the activities which we're still focused on is, we're very dispersed in trying to do a lot of things which aren't necessarily of added value, but we're so submerged, I think, in the world of customer success by doing too many things. So I think if we can have, as you said, if we can just have, obviously you can't have conversation. If you're a customer success manager and you have 1,000 customers, you can't have conversations with all of them. But at least put into place, even if it's automated engagement with those customers, so you can collect data around, their sentiment and are they getting value, and with forms and surveys, and obviously you've got to have human one-to-one conversations with everyone. But one of the other things that around this, because I think for me going forward, the key as I think customer success is taking a new turn. And I think we're realizing, because we've inherited this way of working as I said earlier, it's a bit like a, reactionary thing. It's a churn buster. We're still trying to prevent churn. That's what we're still trying to do. So we've still got this legacy kind of positioning, risk-taking and defensive kind of situation. I think what we should be doing now is being more proactive around value. So this is why the AMPM is really important. And one of the other things that we've put into place are new KPIs around capturing whether or not value is being perceived by the customer. That's really important. So the AMPM is something very specific and it's very contextualized. And then we put into place, I mentioned it at Engage Paris, in fact, we put into place this new KPI, which we've called VPS.
Mm-hmm.
And VPS is value perception score. And value perception score is a question, it works very much like the NPS. And it asks the question to either the user or the stakeholder, but it's mainly to the stakeholders, to find out whether or not they have perceived value as a consequence of their investment. So the question, in the NPS, it's a question, rank from 1 to 10, would you recommend this product, or would you recommend this service? With the value perception score, it's verbatim. And the question is, how much value did you receive relative to your target business goals? And the reply, in fact, is not on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a verbatim reply. So the first reply is, we surpassed the target goals. We've reached target goals. There's no change yet in achieving our target goals. We did not reach the target goals, or we went backwards, which I hope is not the case, right? So it's a very specific question and a specific reply. And then based on this reply, then the same mechanism applies to the NPS. So that's a great way of really seeing over the customer life cycle. You can actually address this question periodically. You can address it after the onboarding. You can address it probably after 6 months, and probably just 2 months before they're about to renew, to see whether or not they perceived value.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks a lot. So I'd like to finish on a more personal note. I always ask the guests on our webinars and live talks to share one of their biggest fails, so we can learn from your mistakes. So are you able to share a big fail in your years in CS?
Well, for me, I always look at failure as not a failure, but as a learning curve to then go on and do something else, right? So I think for me that the biggest failure kind of goes back to the anecdote that I was telling you about 25 years ago, when I took the French CRM to the Silicon Valley. I always remember that because I spent I did a road trip. So it was not just in the Silicon Valley, but it was around different areas in the United States. But I remember particularly that particular day when I did it was like a training day for the US sales team. So they sat through a day. It was typical back those, wasn't it, Seb? You sat through a day of training. It was really long and laborious, and everybody loved those kind of days. And at the end, I remember clearly the vice president of sales there said, "Well, Sue, this was a great training. Well done. The problem is, we just don't work like that here, right?" So that's what he said. So I thought, oh, great, how to take this. But that, for me, that says it all, doesn't it? Because I think even today, when we're deploying tools, we're very much belly button focused. This is the tool. This is the best thing since sliced bread. This is wonderful. Look at all these new shiny buttons. And we don't think enough about, okay, what is the business context in which this tool is going to be camouflaged, going to be immersed, right? And that's what he was saying with his statement, right? So since then, that's when it was like the light bulb. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to be in tech and technology, but what's really important is the fleshware. It's not the techware, it's the fleshware. So that's why I'm still here 25 years later, Seb, to tell this story. And that's really what makes me tick in the world of customer success, because for me, change management is key to customer success. And in the world of customer success, we're only talking about the product because it's the tangible part of the iceberg. It's the easiest part to talk about because we can see it. Everybody can see it. It's the only probably shared part between the vendor and the customer. all the 90% of what really counts is in the submerged part of the iceberg. And that's where all the human magic takes place, right? The human magic takes place. That's what we need to master. If we can master that, we've cracked the Da Vinci Code for customer success. Yeah.
Cool. Well, here's to cracking the code then. Thank you so much, Sue. We're a bit behind schedule, but I think hopefully you guys enjoyed your time listening to this talk. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Sue. Let's try and all be more earn boosters more so than churn busters.
Yeah.
That's a great. That sounds like a great plan. Thank you so much, Sue. We will be pausing during the European summer break, so in the next 2 months, like ish. So there won't be any other live talks on CS Nation or our Melting Spot Academy, but we'll be back in late September and early October, sorry, with more insights. And we'll be sharing results of a new survey that we recently conducted around a focus on product adoption among the CS industry. So we will share results of this benchmark. It's been out for a couple of weeks, and we'll be sharing this survey around in the next 2 months and sharing results in a live talk early October. Thank you so much, Sue, for your time. Have a wonderful summer break. If you can afford the holidays, I hope so. And
yes.
we'll see each other after the break.
Thank you so much, Seb. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you, and thank you to everyone who listened to us today. So I can see some familiar names. So thank you, everyone. It's great to see you all. You mentioned a survey, Seb, about the adoption.
Yes.
For anybody who is listening and who is in Europe, I've just launched a survey around salaries for customer success.
True. Okay.
So it's a joint initiative between myself, between Mick Vigers, between Daphne Lopez from HubSpot, and Marcus Wrench and Jason Noble. So there were 5 of us, all based in Europe. And what we've done is launch this collaborative benchmark around customer success salaries, because a lot of the survey and benchmarking salaries today is very US focused. So it's very difficult if you want to try and compare your salary if you're in Europe. So if anybody's interested in taking part, there's still some time left.
Cool.
So you can contact me afterwards, and I can send the link to that survey.
We'll pop the link to the survey in the chat, so everyone can take the survey, even those watching the replay. So
wonderful.
Cool, and we'll be watching out for results.
Wonderful. It'll be interesting. Cool. And it's tied back to what we were saying about, you were just saying about being an earn booster. I think there's a correlation between an earn booster and the salaries, right? That you can expect.
There's got to be. Certainly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sue. Enjoy the rest of your week. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening in, and see you after the summer break.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice